And in many ways, I feel like it's kind of going towards like macho culture, like many other sports, like, like boxing or wrestling or things like this. Like there's already influences of that in the culture, in our dance. But like it's sometimes like when you see the breaking jams where there's a girl in a bikini going around with the cart and like,
Oh,
it's in a
those
boxing
what are
ring,
they?
stuff
The
like that.
the
Like
I
that
think I've seen that
that
with the
stuff.
Monster Girls, right? The Monster
Yeah.
competitions. They have those chicks there with the signs and bikinis, which I thought was hilarious. I was like, really? That's what we gotta
Yeah, I
do?
find it really weird. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I find it uncomfortable. In my head, I was like, is she getting paid more than the B-girl?
Right. I do. Okay, so this is where it gets tricky though, Links. Okay, so in a lot of cases, I'm with you, right? But where it gets tricky is when you try to talk about like privilege and being in the majority when you're talking with like a black American within the culture, right? Because you're talking about a culture that over time has in many ways squeezed out the originators, right? So like when I go to a jam, like I don't feel like I'm in the minority. I usually feel like I'm amongst a lot of like Latinos or white kids or Asian kids or black, but not black like me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, people come up and tell us about what we should be doing, and I'm like, hold up, who are you talking to? You know what I'm saying? So I think that'll be one of the only places where it might get a little tricky because I don't know if the average black American person, in breaking feels that feeling of like being in the majority and being the like the powered ones. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
we're being told that in many cases we're being told like you guys didn't create nothing. This is everybody's. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure you can imagine how that must sound to us. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the
Yeah.
old
I
Chris is
agree.
ready to come out. You know what I'm saying? Like, what you say? I think that's just where it might get tricky.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it'll get so tricky that a conversation like what we're having now. You know what I'm saying? Because I
Yeah.
see where you're coming from. Like I can imagine because to an extent I experience it. You know what I'm saying? Like as as odd as that may sound. You know what I'm saying? Like I walk in and and I got to go through those same checkpoints almost. I feel sometimes that I have to go through almost those same checkpoints that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to like we mentioned earlier, a B girl like Maka, she got to go through double checkpoints.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? She got to go through all the girl checkpoints,
Mm-hmm.
and then she has to go through the this black people didn't invent this and da 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 da. So but outside of that, I'm with you.
But I agree with you, and I think that this issue of equity is like multi-layered. The issue of unconscious bias, like when I'm talking about unconscious bias and equity, it also crosses many other aspects. So I think you're absolutely right, right? In the area of we need equity in terms of like gender, but we also need equity in many other areas. And I think it's like absolutely ridiculous to say that African American people didn't invent this dance. Like I think, to be honest, like I don't, and I think that comes from people defensiveness and wanting to protect their own interests, and and I think that like what I said earlier is that equity initiatives in every area will make people uncomfortable, you know.
You have to feel like you said if we have to tilt it back, that means you have to give up something. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? Maybe your position becomes reduced because it wasn't really the position you should have had in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? But no, I feel you. Like
And I
versus
think that
equality versus the yeah. No,
these
you're
are the
you're
dialogues that we have to be open to entertain, right? Like we have to start having these dialogues and people being able to admit, like, yeah, like me being able to admit, like as a white person in the culture, I benefit from privilege. right? In the culture at large and in this culture, and have to admit, like, okay, so what are the equity, what equity initiatives can I participate in to rebalance the scales? What is there? Start having dialogues about this. Like, the first step is acknowledging that these things exist.
Right.
Right? That to me is that the first, in the sense of, like, because this is inequality and bias, it isn't just a gender thing. It goes beyond gender lines, and it's like there's racial inequality and racial bias, which has come to the forefront. All of these things have been coming to the forefront in our societies at large, because these are issues that have been longstanding and have affected all of us. And so that's why it's really important, and it's important for us to embrace, like, this might make me uncomfortable, what, and like, here and look at, like, my teachers, my male teachers, who were all African American or of some African American or Black descent, Afro-Canadian, exactly, or maybe they're actually, like, African. One of my teachers was born in Africa, so he immigrated to Canada. So it's like, they are my mentors, and I owe my lineage and my career and my lifestyle to their teaching. So in what way can I give back? I'm always open to this discussion of how can I assist as an ally? And maybe, like you said, maybe there's things that I need to give up, or maybe that, or become aware of unconscious bias that I would need to become aware of and acknowledge. And even looking at my students, like, how can I help, how can I help my students, my students of Afro-Canadian descent? How can I help push them and give them opportunities to be in the forefront of the dance?
No doubt. And, we were talking about things coming to the forefront. Something else that came to the forefront, especially during this pandemic, was I guess you would say, I think you put it in as, like, or you spoke on it as, like, the rape culture.
These women, some of them had issues with it. Some of them didn't have issues at all, but they're not changing their votes.
Well, it says a lot. One, it says that I definitely live in a bubble. And the bubble that I live in is one where sexual assault and culture is not okay. And that's a bubble that I never want to climb out of. I never want to get to a point where someone's words about harmful and offensive touching and groping are okay. They're not okay. And one of the things that I wanted to do was read quickly just what the definition of sexual assault is, because he denied any type of assault when Anderson asked him about it at the debate last night. Sexual assault is any type of sexual contact or behavior that occurs without the explicit consent of the recipient. Falling under the definition of sexual assault are sexual activities as forced sexual intercourse, forcible sodomy, incest, fondling, and attempted.
A lot of call outs happened while everybody was at home, and they were like, now that we're all at home, by the way, this is what happened to me, right? What do you think, how do you define the, and how do you think we got here?
It's interesting, because when we use that name in the Queen's Creation, we had a discussion about that. And actually, I had a lot of, I would say, personal resistance to using that. It was actually a mandate from a community group who gave us funding to initiate that dialogue. So, I think this idea of, again, I really don't like using that word, to be honest. I kind of have a personal...
It's a shocking word, right?
Trigger. Yeah, it's very triggering. It's very triggering. Like, anyone who's been a victim of or a survivor can find just the name of that topic very triggering, So, but I think what it's looking to, and again, I think it was also very hard to identify, like, what does that actually mean to us, and how do we define that? But I do think that it talks about a culture in which women's bodies and women are treated as property and are not respected. So commodified, disrespected, treated as like lesser than equal, or a power dynamic where women have no voice. about what happens to them and their bodies. So I think that that could probably encompass culture, this feeling of entitlement that men would have about women's bodies and their lives. So, and that's like, I think that's a really extreme kind of culture, but I like, and to be honest, it's a kind of like thing that I think I try to avoid, you know, and then sometimes it comes up in the media, or it comes up and I'm just shocked. I'm shocked, you know, by the extremity of some of the things that come up, you know, in that vein, where the depth of the disrespect, you know, is so intense. Yeah. So I think that would, or, you know, situations where what could encompass again, culture. Like, yeah, I think it's just this idea of women as commodities, as property.
No doubt. And not to minimize it or to cause any split between the ladies, but
I think that's a weird thing, because there's a lot of b-boys who are really promiscuous. There's actually a lot of b-boys who cheat on their wives and their girlfriends when they go on tour. You know, there's a lot of things that we all know about a lot of b-boys, and I would never want to bring that up and put anybody in a bad light, but
for more quality content from Beyond the Cypher with Illskillz, don't forget to press the like and subscribe buttons. Also, feel free to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Beyond the Cypher. Let us know how we're doing down in the comment section, and to make sure you don't miss anything from the channel, smash that notification bell. We appreciate the love and support. Peace. Until the next episode.